Hey, welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Excited to be here, back with Alex Kushner, producer Alex. He and I are weighing in live on YouTube, something we're trying to do a couple times a week, talk about what's going on in our world right now, just apart from podcast guests and what they're experiencing. Today, we want to dive into kind of a relevant topic, I think, in the world of leadership, but I also look at this as a parent. I have a daughter who's 17 who is soon going to be going off to something other than high school. So today, we're going to dig into, is a college degree still valuable? Is it still required? Alex, you just shared a stat with me, and we'll use this as the open. Go ahead. Why don't you read off the stat that you found in regards to college degrees and in the job world?
Absolutely. Yeah. There were, behind the scenes, we're always doing research and looking at, what's trending and what's happening right now. Obviously, a lot of kids are graduating or young adults, going into the workforce here soon. And a lot of people are probably going to graduations. But the Wall Street Journal, Forbes recently came out. These are, just a few days old, about some studies when it came to our companies hiring college grads. And in a recent Forbes article, companies are hiring fewer and fewer college graduates. So why bother with school was the headline of this article. And in the stat it gave, a recent study from intelligent.com found that 45% of companies plan to eliminate degree requirements from certain positions in 2024. Many have already done so. The number of jobs requiring a bachelor's degree fell to 44% in 22, down from 51% in 2017. Now, the shift here, and the reason why they're saying this, is that companies are shifting the focus to more skill-based assessments, paying less attention to the accolades and more to demonstrated skills.
Okay, so in my opinion, there's a lot to dig into, and we're going to keep this centric to leadership and the challenges of leading organizations and people. Again, I centered a little bit of this on as a father whose, kids are in the high school age, and we're looking for what does that look like. I think the first factor that I want to highlight, and I want to reference the article you talked about from Forbes. There's a little line a little bit further down, and it says, the average 4-year degree is $125,000. Okay.
Wow.
When you stop and think about that, and you think about that investment for the average 4-year, that means there's some that are maybe zero, and there's some that's 250, 300, 400,000, right? And what are you getting for that? And I think that's the place that I want to start. Education is an investment. It's an investment in yourself. It's an investment to the future. And I think what's happened, if I go back, I graduated high school in 1997, right? I was a second generation college attendee. My parents both were first generation. They both attended college in the late 60s, early 70s. And that was a big deal. That was a different time of life where, it was a lot of first generation going to college. And we still have that today, first generation seeing in higher education. But here's the factor that I want to kind of lay into is, as a society, we've said, go to college or else. Go to college or, you really don't have any opportunities. Growing up on a farm, it was often go to college to get away from here, to go see something bigger and have bigger opportunities. And that was kind of much of what my parents sought for me. And I think what's happened, if I look over the last 27 years since I graduated high school. I'm bald. You can't tell how old I am. You can't even see any of the gray
hairs. When you say it out loud, though, you're like 27 years. Holy moly.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my wife yesterday. This is a tangent. Get used to it. Enjoy it. I was talking to her about, we have friends who's, obviously kids are graduating high school and some of them are graduating college. And I'm like, I have a friend who the high school friends, and they got married right out of high school, had their daughter fairly early, not in high school, but afterwards. She's already graduated college, onto her career, getting married. And I'm like, oh, yeah, those are my peers. But anyways, going back to this, graduating high school 27 years ago, and the idea of, you can't really go into the workforce unless you have a degree. Well, here's what I think is interesting. If you track the cost of education based the average starting salary, I went to Cornell University. I look at those numbers, and that cost of education has more than doubled. Okay, I went there, and it was about, I think it was $28,000 when I started. It was like $32,000 when I finished. I think the last numbers I saw were somewhere in the mid 60s per year. Annual tuition room, annualized,
Yeah.
60 some thousand. Okay, so you're looking over 4 years, potential cap of $240,000. All right, that's it. Now, here's what's amazing. My annual salary when I first started into my career was $43,000. That was in 2001. My starting salary was $43,000. And what's amazing, graduating with an animal science degree, if we were to go on Glassdoor, if we were to look on LinkedIn for that same type of position, as I've looked into it, that starting salary is within 10% of what I started. So it might be upper 40s now. It's not double like it was. And when you start looking at all the other costs, I can remember buying, man, this is not supposed to be like, how old are you, Tyler? But my first career, nutrition, dairy nutrition, I drove a lot. I remember buying gas for 97 cents a gallon. Okay.
I remember those
So when
days.
you start thinking about those costs of living, all those things, and we start to pack all of this into a suitcase, that suitcase is way heavier to carry now than it was. What different are we? So go ahead.
I just looked up the average cost right now for Cornell University per year, by the way, is around $78,000.
Okay, so it's more than double.
Yeah.
I mean, incrementally, I have a friend that worked in admissions. They said they go up about $1,000 a year. That's just static, $1,000 a year for them. And so when you look at that, I mean, Cornell's within $1,000, $1,500 a year.
Well, my kids are younger, but I have to imagine, everyone listening to this either probably have college age kids or kids near going to college, or you have just recently graduated and there's a slowing economic market and jobs market out there.
Yeah.
And you go, well, what the hell do I do? Or if you're in leadership category and you're saying, well, I want to find and hire young talent, how do you adapt? How do you adapt to this new climate?
I actually reflect back to the podcast that I released earlier this week on Tuesday with Mark Miller. And one of the things that I really grabbed out of that episode that Mark said is so many organizations are tasked with doing on-the-job training right now, but a lot of them just kind of turn their head and think it'll just get done. To me, that's the big thing that's happening here, is you can go to college, and so often people are like, I can remember I went to college and like, oh, I'd know everything to do as far as my job. I didn't know half of really what the job was. And even at that point, my managers, the leaders in the organization really didn't understand. They'd put us in sales training. They'd put us in different trainings. They didn't understand that it needed to be relationship training. All the things that we think about today, the soft skills, those are the imperative tools. And yet, rarely are you getting that within a college setting. It's all technical. It comes back to, we're not looking at a degree, but have you figured out the actual skills that the job needs? And a lot of times that has nothing to do with the actual technical, has everything to do with how do you work with people? How do you get the best out of people? And those are leadership skills. Those are personal leadership skills that translate into others.
What are tangible takeaways, young people, let's say, for instance, can take away from this conversation that they can start doing now if they are, let's say, recent college grads looking to join the workforce and they are having a tough time? Is it they have to acquire more skills and knowledge, or share more of their personal stories? Like, what do they need to do to have a chance?
One of the great changes we've seen is, as you mentioned this article, that you can't apply for a job unless you have a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, whatever it may be. I think people in organizations, leadership, are starting to understand that does not bring us the best people. It brings us the most dedicated students with a high level of debt in a lot of cases. but doesn't bring us the best candidates. So if you're sitting here and maybe you're listening, you're graduating high school, or maybe you have a high school diploma. Maybe you have a bachelor's degree. We talked about this the other day. The woman and her daughter who painted my studio, right, who've done some work for us, she's a recent college graduate with a master's degree in interdiscipline education. And I asked her, what are you doing? She goes, I'm painting with my mom. Because that's the reality. There aren't necessarily jobs. As much as you think you can go to college, you can get this degree, there aren't jobs that are translating. We've almost oversaturated some of the places because we've underemphasized the skills that are actually needed. So if you're sitting here saying, hey, how do I get a job? What do I do? I think the first thing is look for education. You don't have to go to college to get an education. There's a lot of great people that have phenomenal courses that have supplanted that classical education stream. Say you want to get into sales, look for some of those, skill set trainings and courses. You want to help grow as a person, self-development. Those courses are available. YouTube is an amazing tool to learn and develop skills. LinkedIn has amazing training and skills that are a fraction of the cost of what classical universities are. So look there.
And what if, Tyler, you're the hiring manager and you're seeing all these resumes come through? What are they doing? How can they evolve and kind of move with the trend of time? Are they shifting their focus to more skill based? Do they continue looking at what universities they came through? Like what can hiring managers do to shift their strategy?
I think a big part is shed the impressions of a former generation. And that's really hard. Hey, we're having this conversation, right? I'm 44, you're late 30s. It's easy for us to have this conversation because we've seen it and experienced. It's really hard for, leaders that are maybe my parents' age, that are into their 70s, to stop and think of, oh, the college education that was just so important in my life now isn't worth as much. Economically, it's told us that. I paid $200,000 for it and I make $40,000. The return on investment is not very good. So that is the first discussion, I think, within a lot of organizations, whether it's from an HR department, leadership, and saying, hey, do we have policies that restrict us finding people because we've put an overemphasis on something that is no longer valid and valuable? And stopping and again, listening to the people in the organization to say, hey, I have all these new college graduates. Maybe they have master's degrees, because what it's been is if you can't find a job after a bachelor's, go get an advanced degree. That'll help you get a job. Hasn't played out, but that's been the sales pitch for many universities and advisors. And I think that's where we need to stop in organizations and say, hey, are we bringing in people that are capable? Or if they're incapable, and even though they have those degrees and we're teaching them, maybe we need to change what our requirements are.
Capable or incapable? How do you define that? And how does one, you personally, and then how do some of these corporations define, hey, this is a capable person, hard skills or soft skills, or maybe they're incapable? Can you go into that?
I think that's where a lot of organizations, and I think of a member of my roundtable, who she is a leader of a HR leader in a multinational, couple thousand employees. And as we discuss this, kind of talk about it, they have a assessment within their organization of people that are high potential. And as we've talked about it, they're challenged to say, oh, what does that really mean? And they're having to redefine that, and they're having to redefine that leadership element within their organization, because what we thought were credentials of validity in the past are no longer. So it really comes down to, are we using popular assessments that help us identify that? StrengthsFinder. Are we looking at what are the skills that we need more for that position, knowing that if it's a highly technical skill like engineering, and we talk about AI, people that are able to develop those skills, yes, that is a skill set maybe needs advanced education. But if you're looking at Salesforce education, we're looking at people that are going out and selling, there isn't this massive requirement for a bachelor's degree. But I do believe this, is there's always, always, always going to be a emphasis on education. I don't have to have a bachelor's degree. But man, if I worked a couple jobs and figured out and learned life lessons and I did some, kind of extra learning on myself, I'm a learner, I'm a reader, I'm someone who's focused on growth, man, that's always going to give you an opportunity. And just because you go to college, used to be those were believed, it doesn't mean that's the case.
Yeah, and we're always learning, right? That is something that I've taken with me, since I've graduated, is that wherever we go, whatever we do, we should always be reading, acquiring new knowledge and information to help us grow and enhance us, personally, professionally, mentally, physically, emotionally. And those are some of the skills, that these businesses, especially, if you're a younger person looking to grow and become a leader, right? What are some of the skills that strong leaders have, Tyler, that some of the younger audience, that's listening right now need to start acquiring to become that leader of the future?
Well, I think one of the first ones is self-awareness. And the problem with self-awareness is it's hard to find until you have that desire for it, right? And, a lot of that evolution is growth and failure forward. Hey, it didn't work out for me. What do I need to be aware of? This didn't happen. What do I need? How do I reflect? And I think that internal growth and finding ability to be self-aware. Hey, what is it that I really need to know that's important in this role or this opportunity? So that self-awareness and then accepting our unique strengths and gifts. I mentioned this. I had a podcast with one of my future speakers at the Impact Summit, Graham Cochran, yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about this. And one thing that he noted, and he has a business all about helping people get paid for what they know. That's his entire business. It's amazing. And one thing that we talked about is most often people don't realize what their superpower is. They need someone else to tell them. And every single person on this planet has a unique superpower. And part of that growth is being self-aware to understand what is your superpower and how to serve people with it. So this is, it's rather abstract, but unfortunately, that's why it's so difficult. It's not an easy technical skill. I can just go and say, hey, here's a math set. Go be an accountant and understand this, the taxation code and the math set. That's why it's hard. That's why it's been difficult, is it takes some internal reflection and it takes time and counsel to say, all right, what am I uniquely gifted at? What are the limitations of that gifting and how can I best apply it? That takes self-awareness and being around and working with other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just quick plug real quick. I know you mentioned the Impact Summit, which you will be hosting July 29th and 30th this year in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yes.
John Maxwell is going to be there, Jake Thompson, Graham Cochran, Katie Casada. Going to be an amazing event. So make sure you check that out in the captions. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to go back because you have an amazing course. And for those that don't know, Tyler has courses you got to check out. They'll also be in the caption. But your first chapter, Awaken, it kind of reminded me of that. You say at the top, my biggest insecurity is not feeling worthy, valued, accepted, or rejected. It has been a factor for as long as I can remember and think about, and likely in middle school. And you go on, tell the story about your family and how you move communities. But this accepted, rejected, value worthy, I think is really relevant to professional career as well. And there's a connection there. Can you go further and kind of give the audience about, this awakening? Because I think when you mentioned, self-awareness, it just kind of spoke to me.
Well, I think it's one thing that I've learned, and this is my own coming to grips with my insecurity, is every single person in the world, if they're living and breathing today, they struggle with insecurity in some form or fashion. Struggle with it, meaning that I know it's there, I've identified it, and I have to work through it every day. And then there's others that, no, I don't want to admit my insecurities. I don't have those, they don't exist, or I don't want to admit fears. One of the first things that I believe is in order to remove those fears, you got to recognize them. You got to understand they're real. I have a fear of mice. It is what it is. It's not rational. I grew up on
Wait,
a
do you
farm.
really have a fear of mice?
Oh, dude, deadly. Like if there was a mouse in my office that ran across this floor right now, I would jump on top of this desk and scream like a 3-year-old child. I would. It is irrational. I
That
understand it. There's
is
plenty of
crazy.
stories and circumstances that back it up, but that's real. Now, I can sit here and say it's unreal, and that doesn't help me. But if I accept it, it's real. It's like, great, Tyler, it's irrational. So you take a moment. Yes, you see it happen. And then you go and I go squish it, right? I go, take care of the situation. The same is with our insecurities. For example, not feeling like I have value. I can't sit here and tell you, oh, that's not true. Because when it shows up, if I don't recognize it being true, when it shows up, I won't mitigate it.
Yeah.
I'll try to hide it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in kind of this, the working title of a future book is, excuse me, is my insecurity showing? Because when our fears and insecurities affect those others, well, we don't have self-awareness. That's what holds us back from being able what we can do. And that's the first step in awakening, is recognizing you have fears and insecurities, and where do they come from? What's some of the drivers there? When do they show up in relationship with others? So that way you can move past them.
Yeah, and maybe for some people listening right now that have graduated, that are entering the workforce, and you have fear or insecurity. First of all, we all do,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's okay. And second, it's coming to awareness, right? That you have these fears, you have these insecurities. Do I have the skills to get the job? I think I do. I'm unsure. What can someone do once they are aware of it? What happens next? What should be the next process in their minds to take grasp hold of that, and to make that a strength of theirs, and then take that into maybe an interview?
Yeah. And well, the next step within Awaken is owning how you show up to others. And I think that's a big part of it. I kind of mentioned that earlier, is, excuse me, is my insecurity showing? Once we recognize that it's there, it is a part of life, how does it affect how you show up to people? If you walk into an interview and your insecurity is overwhelming you, and you slouch back, maybe you don't hold yourself tall with confidence, that's your insecurity showing, and everyone knows it that sees you. They don't understand what your insecurity is, but they know how it shows up. And so part of getting over that is owning how it shows up. It's like, yeah, all right, my insecurity's showing. I'm not going to let it kind of limit my superpower, because my superpower is still in there, but I have to own how that shows up to people. For me, I'm a recovering a-hole. I would show up just kind of a know-it-all, because the central question that I have is, am I wanted? And so I was always trying to prove my worth and my value by how much I knew. And so it was very, kind of aggressive or intense and confident, borderline arrogant, all those things. Think of the a-holes that you know in life. In my guess, in most of those situations where I've seen those people, it's an overwhelming armor for their insecurity, as opposed to the person that is confident and it's like, yeah, it is what it is. I don't have anything to prove, but I can still hold myself in confidence because I know I have value. That's understanding and owning how you show up to people.
Yeah, I think just for everyone listening, we can all, that's a lesson we can all take. And maybe for leadership, if you're struggling right now and maybe business is tough, take a step inward, right? It could be you, the one with all the armor up, with the insecurities up, and put down the ego a little bit, right? Tyler, what can they start doing? Maybe someone that's a little older, has a business, in a leadership position, but not kind of seeing the results they want from maybe the team around them. What can they start to do to kind of fix these problems that they may be facing professionally, to become the person that they're seeking, to break down the armor, and to fulfill the destiny that they say they want, but it seems to be through action not happening?
Address the reality. I had an interview and podcast a few years ago, and I'll try to make sure we link it back, with Brad Lomenick. Brad Lomenick is an author. He wrote a book, H3 Leadership. And in it, at this point, this is like 5-6 years ago now. This is previous, like long time ago. He showed the CEO of New, the CEO today, stands in front of the boardroom. In all the turmoil that is raise their arms, is like, see the sweaty pits? I'm sweating. I don't know exactly how we're going to move forward, but I believe in this room. I believe in the people in this room that will be able to figure it out. He goes, the difference is the person of old, and this was, again, they still are in boardrooms today, is the CEO executive that he or she stands in front. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, not a bead of sweat anywhere, and I have all the answers. See, that person is most scary in our world today, because they're a literal loose cannon. And so many people don't trust them because they say, I have all the answers. And usually the answers come at someone else's expense, not theirs. Instead of saying, I don't know, but we're going to figure this out together, and you bind that together. That's what I think is the great opportunities, and that authentic, transparent type leadership. You don't have to tell all the truth, but tell the truth. Hey, sales are off. We're missing in this section. Or, you know what? Hey, there's financial challenges because of interest rates. They are what they are. They're double what they were, 2 years ago. And so that is added an additional cost. Man, the margins are tighter. We got to figure out ways to make it up. How do we continue to progress forward? And if we all collectively understand the challenge, then we can rise to it. But if I want to tell you everything is great or everything is horrible to motivate you, it's not going to, because you're lost. And I think that is, again, owning how you show up to people and what brings the best out of people. People don't expect leaders to have all the answers. They expect them to help them find the answer.
This kind of brought up a question. If I have a friend, they just interviewed for a role at a mindful company. And she's very qualified, top notch, but she's emotionally intelligent, super passionate, and connected with the business, that claims to be, very mindful, and all those purpose driven. But when it came to the bottom line, hey, we need someone who fits the culture and has this vibe. But, we're going to go with the other person who can, who's been doing something at a big company for 15 years and made them a lot of money. And maybe they're I don't know the other person, but she really felt she had this job. But she's like, well, maybe it's because I didn't really sell the sales part, but I was selling all the other parts a little more. And, obviously her skill. But the person who, has a proven track record of the growth in business, she felt that she wasn't, that she's like, dude, all they really care about is at the end of the day, the bottom line and revenue. Is it her? Is it the business? Is it the hiring manager? I guess people working through a similar situation where they feel like they have so much to offer, right? A company. But yet at the end of the day, they go with the person who can potentially make them more money. How do you fight or battle through something like that?
The first thing is, I feel for your friend. Because sometimes when you try to show up authentic and you try to do it humbly, you don't spotlight maybe some of those things that seem like quick fixes for organizations. And that can be a real holdback and detriment. And I think, unfortunately, I have seen this in a lot of cases where, and can I say I've been victim of it? Probably. I've probably made the mistake at times. You hire the person that needs less grooming and refining because you want instant results, who ultimately probably doesn't fit, because you're looking for that easy, instant results. So often in leaders, and this is a challenge, we have for so many leaders and people feeling like they're not being led well, is leadership takes time and action. Mentorship takes time and action, but it's always worth it. And unfortunately, oftentimes people will hire the employee thinking they will come with instant results and I can be hands off and they're just autonomous on their own. And rarely have I found that actually works out best for everyone, because usually that person is, it'll work great for a little while until something doesn't, and then they're off to the next. Or they come at a cost, meaning, you know what, they're kind of fit culture, but man, they're going to deliver tremendous results. And then all of a sudden you realize the results do not outweigh the costs of not fitting the culture. And so coming back to your friend in bringing back central to that, someone listening, watching, that is in maybe that same place, they've gone through a couple of interviews and they miss out. Don't be afraid to ask deeper questions. Make the leader think, hey, in this case, would you rather someone that has an established track record of sales or someone that actually is going to make the organization better? Oftentimes they will be shocked, like I don't know what you're asking. And again, those are simple questions that really start to identify what's more important for you. What's more important for your organization, and having the confidence. And here's another fact to this that I've learned to be true. It's both through experience, but also books that I've read. It has been identified that if there's a job application and say there's 10 requirements, men predominantly, if they meet 6 to 7, they will apply for that job, go after it. And women as a whole, as it's been identified, oftentimes they won't unless they meet all 10 out of 10. And I think back to your friend is realize for her, what's her superpower? What can she do that no one else can do? Because it doesn't matter if that's the only one of the requirement. If that's what the organization needs, that's what you can provide. And you can learn the rest of them. You can develop the rest of them as long as they're not things that you're against or total limitations. And I think that's where we evolve going forward is how can I use what I'm uniquely gifted at to solve problems for people where that hasn't been the traditional business sense.
You said something that was awesome. I mean, everything you said was great, but the one particular line about asking questions in those interviews, deeper, meaningful questions, I think everyone, whether you're looking for a job, interviewing young, older, no matter what level, I think if you do that in a very sincere, non-egotistical way, where you're just really asking, passionately, and you're sincere about it, it will get that hiring manager to really think, and they go, "Holy shit! No one asked me that before."
And I think
that's a great takeaway. That is a really great takeaway.
Here's the challenge there. I sit here at 44 and say that. 24, could I have done that? No. But I think the great opportunity is to seek that understanding and believe in yourself and have people around you, mentors. I had a member of the roundtable the other day, and he shared this great piece of wisdom. His dad shared with him. He said, make friends of generations around you. If you're in their 30s, be around people in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s. Be around people in their 20s and their teens. Because that gives you such a different perspective and valuable insight on life. And when you're going through, when we're looking at hiring, when we're looking at evaluating, is the cost of education worth it? And that's what we're centering back to. Education's always worth it, but it doesn't have to come in the form that is shoved down your throat. Education is worth it, absolutely. But it doesn't mean I need to go back to Cornell University and spend $75,000 a year to go then earn $45,000 to $50,000 in your career. The ROI does not pencil.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other intrinsic values of that education, but yet that's where we need to evaluate, and it comes down into hiring. And as we look at bringing people on, here's the question, the great sentiment we haven't touched. And I hate to go away from the hiring, but and it does come to the hiring.
Tyler, this is your podcast. We can talk. We can go any direction we want, baby. This is the cool thing about it. We can go wherever.
You're hiring a person. All of a sudden you look down, and as we just discussed, someone went to Cornell University. Great. That's awesome. I did too. I know the education is about $75,000 a year. Say they got a lot of scholarships like I did. They're probably sitting here and they have between $50,000 and $100,000 in debt. Okay. They're looking at the cost of living. I know our starting salary is $65,000. Well, then I have somebody else that went to a junior college, worked in a trade. They, they got a degree that they found online, did whatever, and they've been very uh, on their own, right? I'm looking for the right word. They've done it on their own. Huh.
Maybe some freelance work. Maybe they were just doing
Yep.
that,
They have
on their own,
experience.
building a
Man,
resume.
their pressure of meeting a bill is a whole lot lower. Salary's still the same. They're still qualified. And I think this is one of the big challenges we've seen, whether people want to realize it or not. I don't want to say deal because that's the wrong word. But do I want to have to navigate the challenges of somebody that is up to their eyeballs in debt because of the choices they've tried to just play the game that people need, that say they need to play? Or do I want to work with someone who's been driven, who's figured out a different way to do it, has not followed just the plan that's laid in front of them, and they're sitting here at my office and they want the job? Man, I'd much rather work with that person that's not as stressed financially. Now you could say, oh, people with, more stressed financially, they're more driven. I don't agree with that. I think that comes at a cost, right? It's all of a sudden they start to be overwhelmed as opposed to driven. And there's a big difference there. And I think if we come to mental health and you think about your organization and dealing with mental health, I would love to see some stats on that one. Hey, assess your office, assess your workforce. How many of them, what amount of debt do they carry based upon their mental health? And I bet you see a direct correlation. Just a guess.
Yeah, and there's there's so many tentacles to this conversation. So we can go in a lot of different directions.
While you're doing that, keep going. I just need to grab something to drink.
Yeah. Hey, get the drinks, get the water. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you're enjoying these conversations. We're going to keep them going every week, twice a week, and talk about, a lot of things around leadership is our primary focus, but education, which is direct correlation in leadership. But appreciate everybody jumping on with us. The thing I wanted to discuss within this category that is really getting the mind of these young people graduating and thinking about artificial intelligence. And it's like the tech boom that we had in the mid to late 90s. It seems to be here again, but in artificial intelligence and it being able to. I don't know if you saw who's seen the new Chat GPT 4.0?
I just saw it last night because I used it last night.
And did it look? You look at it's an object or something, and then it told you like you can. It's incredible what this thing can do.
I don't remember that. I know I had a friend that asked for a letter of recommendation, and I said, "All right, I could write it, whatever." And so I go to ChatGPT, and I've done this before. I wrote a letter of resignation one time. And I just said, hey, I need a letter of resignation from this company for this reason. And man, spit it out. I'm like, all right, altered a few words. I'm like, this is great. So the letter of recommendation from my friend, he also sent me his resume. I'm like, perfect. So I upload the resume and boom. And it's not stuff that I don't believe in, right? I still sign my name, still absolutely. And you can alter and change it. But, I think the ability to use AI, there's a great opportunity there. Where it's a challenge is when it's novel thought.
Well, so this is why. So the new feature, right? What it's capable of doing. I'm just going to grab my phone, so maybe it's easier for me to explain. But you're taking, let's say you're at your home, and a pipe broke.
Speaking from experience,
I laugh because it just happened to me. But you could essentially use your camera, say, hey, ChatGPT. What kind of pipe fitting do I need to fix this? And it will tell you the exact fitting, what you need to get. And then you can go, all right, can you order it from Home Depot and ship it to my house? I feel like if this technology is going to also eliminate a lot of positions, right? If you think about if it's capable of doing
we can go down a lot of different paths with this.
Right. So, but if I can just point to things and say, hey, I need you to replace, another one of these remotes. Can you order it on Amazon for me and have it shipped? Like, I no longer need to be asking people for ask them questions about, hey, will this be better in my shower or that be better in my shower? I can have a phone tell me the exact thing and not lie to me. Oh, this product might be better, and just tell me the truth. Potentially, I guess you can say maybe it
Hey,
does know.
what's the truth?
What's the truth, right? That's another.
I mean,
We can
let me
go
just
deep
stop
on
you
this.
right there.
Yeah,
Let's just take that. I had a guest on my podcast, and this was, I think, last season. Sue Dyer is her name. Sue Dyer is a consultant within the construction industry, leadership consultant. But she shared this gem. She goes, the problem with AI is not its effectiveness. The problem with AI is what's the mindset of the person writing the code. And so when you come back, and here's what I'm going to say, you use ChatGPT 4.0 to figure out which pipe fitting you need. Great. McDonald is the name of a company that makes valves. McDonald's like, hey, ChatGPT, can I advertise so that way they go to my valves first? That's what it brings about. And so when you think about, is it best? Well, no, it'll just bring a new avenue of revenue. And I'm not saying that's bad. I used a McDonald valve earlier this spring to fix some irrigation. That's how I know the name of it. And I'm not just this plumbing expert. And I think this is where it still takes brain matter to intuitively understand. And I think that's where, when I've listened to people about AI, I just listened to a podcast, Brene Brown and the lady, let me find her name because it is relevant to this conversation. I think futurist Amy Webb is her name. Okay. And they were talking about AI, and again, it's like AI will continue to get utilized. Absolutely. But it doesn't preclude having people with intelligence.
Yeah.
It doesn't preclude having people that know how to use the information and use it best. So like I can use ChatGPT, you can too, right? But how do you use it, and do you understand what's the best way to use it? Can you become more efficient? Absolutely. And that's a smart, great skill set. Instead of me measuring and searching and trying to figure all of it out in regards to the pipe fitting,
Right.
I use ChatGPT. It's here. I'm off and going. Now I can use my time elsewhere. And I think that's where the tool capacity is becoming greater and greater, but there still is a limitation to what it can do in understanding its limitations.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess my thought was, do people use it now to make their lives more efficient and easier, or to actually do the work for them, making them lazier?
I think you'll have both.
Yeah.
Absolutely, there's both. Hey, if I can use ChatGPT to write a letter of recommendation, that probably would have took me 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, great. What did I do with the rest of my time? Did I go play, did I go do something? Did I just go scroll more?
Right.
Or did I go do something more worthwhile? I spent time with my family.
Yeah.
Okay, both of those are a alternative. And I think the people that use that time wisely are going to be the most benefited. The ones that don't are going to find challenge. Here's where I think is the most interesting conversation. So I don't know what Florida's minimum wage is, but I know you just moved from California. California's minimum wage is over $20, especially in fast food industry. And AI advancement within the restaurant industry, whether it's the delivery cart that drives around, I've seen those, right? I don't know if you've seen those in restaurants, Alex, where, all of a sudden in the kitchen, all of a sudden they put on all the orders, and then this little like Jetsons whatever her name was comes out and delivers your food. I mean, straight up from the Jetson. Right?
Yeah.
That replaced a job or two. Or when you walk into a restaurant and they have a kiosk, or they have a digital platform for ordering, that replaced a person. And so when you start thinking about the advance of AI, it's great. It's replacing people because of the cost, which gives them the opportunity to do more. And it comes back to the college education. Yeah, I just talked to some friends, and their son is going to go into computer science. I was like, whew, That's a hard choice, man. That's an overwhelmed, saturated market that is telling you we need less and less and less of those. And it becomes a commodity to where I'm going to pay that person less and less and less, unless they're Elon Musk exceptional, unless they're just absolutely out of this world, which, okay, there's a great place for. But if you're just an average everyday programmer, AI has said, no, you're not worth as much. You know who's worth more on that team? The leader. The leader has personal skills. The leader that can get the most out of it and help people utilize AI to the greatest capacity. So now all of a sudden, computer science, is it computer science, or are you looking at psychology? Are you looking at communication? Are you looking at those degrees that actually bring out the best in other industries?
So what are the skills? What are the top 3 skills you need to acquire to become a strong leader? Where should they be going for this, and what are they?
I think communication is key. You know, and part of that communication, one of the favorite classes that I had at Cornell, it was because I failed econ. I had to take another class in order that I could graduate. It was one of my greatest gifts of life. It was called interpersonal communication. And it was all about, you know, obviously communication, but it was learning about body language. It was learning that 90% of communication has nothing to do with the words that are said. And that's what first started me along those lines. And I loved the class. I think about it regularly, that class, and how much it meant. That's the first one. Number 2, as far as skills, self-awareness. And self-awareness is hard to come by. Self-awareness, you can't just magically happen one day. Self-awareness takes time, takes effort, takes relationship. So you can only have self-awareness when you're willing to have relationship with people and say, hey, what can you see that I can't? Help me identify my blind spots. What does it feel like to sit across the table from me here? So we talk about communication, self-awareness. And then 3, it's being able to bring out the best in others, right? Really recognizing what skill set you have that helps others do what they do best. Those are all very qualified soft. The communication skill, you can go and learn, right? You can take a class, you can read those things. The other 2, man, it takes interactions, it takes relationships, and it takes time. That's unfortunately the great difficulty and why those are so hard for organizations to train, because they want the quick. They want hey, I put you into this training class. In 6 months, let's assess exactly where you're at. Well, there's a few of them, yes, you can assess that. But others, it's going to take time. It is a year after year and that investment over time and not something instantly tangible.
No, absolutely. No, that was great. And how can we start acquiring some of these skills, if not all of these skills, to become that leader? What can we do on a daily basis? Habits we can form, actionable steps we can take.
I think the first one is, whether it's journaling, whether it's having a practice of, being introspective to say, why did whatever happened today happen? Why in my relationships did it go the way it did? And starting to identify, all right, if I acted like this, what was the result? In this sales call, well, how did they respond? In this, interaction, how did they respond? And start to internalize my actions either made that happen or enhanced that happening. And that takes some time and effort. I mean, it does take the willingness to be that introspective and whether it's gratitude journaling, whether it is a life journaling, whatever is prompt journaling, and start to identify, all right, what fears did I have about today? How did I show up to people? And what can I do to change that mindset? It just happens to be, that's the framework that I followed. That's part of Awaken. But now if I look back and say, man, that's what made the biggest impact in my life. Hey, how did I show up? What caused that? How can I change my mindset and know that I can be better every day?
As we wrap up here, I know we're kind of getting close to our time. Two of the most important questions. Are you and the family going to Taco Bell this Sunday? And what are you doing for Memorial? Are you barbecuing Memorial Day?
Are we going to? So I am actually on a trip. I'm going to be speaking in Montreal.
All
so
right.
looking forward to that. And so on Sunday, I don't know. I'll be getting back late. They might go without me, which
Fair
is
enough.
fine. It does not bother me. On Monday, yes, we will be barbecuing, grilling. I might be putting up some fence posts. I need to repair a couple fence posts around the farm, so I'll probably be doing that. It's supposed to be pretty nice on Monday. Barbecuing, yes, some Black Angus beef.
I got to get a grill. We just moved and I don't.
Okay, you got to get a smoker.
I had a smoker back in California and I did not take it with me.
Okay, that was your probably. I was never a big like smoker fan, like whatever. But man, we use it way more than the grill that we had. It's way easier to use. It's whether it's coming to smoking meats or not, even just using it as a grill.
Yeah.
And
the flavor, dude. The flavor from I always use propane gas, like a propane Weber grill, and then I got that smoker, and I loved it. Yeah. I'm gonna get another one.
Life changer. Okay, that's what you need to do. There's probably a great sale. Ace or Home Depot, we're not sponsored by either one of them today, but I know they both carry Traeger, so you can go out and find yourself a Traeger grill. I prefer the Wi-Fi connected because, that way I don't have to forget about it. That happens.
I love that.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Today, Thursday Breakdown, where we broke down, is college education still worth it? I appreciate you. Remember to subscribe on YouTube so you can see each of these whenever they pop up and content that we share throughout the week. We also release an actual podcast on Wednesday of each week. A little switch there. It was Tuesday. Now it's Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe so you see those. As well, go check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where you can listen to the podcast there. Thanks for being here. Can't wait to see you next time.